Hi, Mike.
Hey, Bill.
What's going on, guys? So today we're going to be doing the second episode of the Superior Strength Coach, and today we wanted to call out Joe Mascaretti because he talks shit about tennis balls all the time. So we're going to give you guys kind of a heads up as to why, because we know it's like very high level stuff. If you've seen any of the videos that we do with training our athletes, a lot of the times you'll see us doing a variety of different tennis ball games, drills, activities. We've always used tennis balls in training here, but we started to expand upon it because of a conference and a seminar that we hosted here live with Lee Taft. When Lee Taft came in, one of the things that he talked about utilizing a little bit more with the athletes was a cool down between speed and what we do with our strength training. So one of the things he talked about was doing different games where athletes had to work on projection and angles and what was going to happen later, right? So how do you predict the ball path in the air? How do you predict where a ball is going to bounce? How do you handle kind of all the crap that a player has to deal with visually and allow them to stay calm and make the right move? So one of the things that we do is we play a variety of games, whether it's two ball, that's just what we call it, where you just catch the ball with both hands. We do other games where athletes put their hands up, we put a ball out, we drop it, they try to react and catch it. It's a low-level reaction hand-eye coordination drill that we can add into what we're already doing with our other reaction and power production that doesn't really tax their system and gives us a 1 to 2% advantage over just plain everyday rest. That's some science behind it. What have you seen in terms of what you like about using tennis balls that you didn't kind of do before you came here to Superior?
I mean, me personally, I know I've gotten just better at movement. Since I've come here, I've just been getting better at movement, whether it's reaction, just sitting into my body differently, like in different angles, getting out of the transverse, the sagittal plane, going a little bit more frontal transverse. Just a disclaimer, I'm on a lot of caffeine right now. It's 9 a.m. I had a scoop of pre-workout and a coffee with a turbo shot, and I'm fucking going crazy right now. So if I start babbling my words, this is why. With our athletes, it's crazy seeing somebody coming from even just a month. Like, we had a lot of the Northwestern girls across here this past month, right before they went back to school, and seeing their ability to react, and one, just within the games, like, in the games, they're obviously going to get better. We're going to play more. The little quirks about it, they're going to overcome, but then even just watching them during drills and just passing and throwing a reaction component and having them pass, have to react, both the thrower and the catcher, right, have to react accordingly and make the play. Seeing them both just like throughout the course of the month get better has been so insane. Just like knowing that, like, because at first, like, I started here how long ago? I don't know, 6 months, 8 months? I don't know, somewhere in there.
Coming up on 9 months, 10 months?
Some shit like that, right? So at first, like, you're learning these things and you're like, all right, I'm learning why we do it. I haven't seen it firsthand. And now, like, after being here for 3/4 of a year, like, seeing different athletes come in, whether they were 12-year-olds who never, like, had any athletic ability and they're getting a little bit better now, to, like, full-blown college D1 athletes who come in here for a month, and seeing them even, like, they're great fucking athletes, right? And they come in, and you're able to just expand on one small part of their game, which they haven't been touching on at all. And that just makes them a whole nother athlete. It's a whole nother animal. It's just so sick to see.
And I think that's where, like, a lot of the strength and conditioning coaches, for a while, we have on the back of our shirts, says performance coach. And I know that some people are like, oh, I'm an athletic preparation coach. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. I'm a power coach. I'm a whatever you want to be. At the end of the day, it's strength and conditioning, and we look at it from different vantage points. And when you change the vantage, you change what you believe your name should be. We want our athletes to perform better. We like to utilize the concept of performance coach because that encompasses anything that will enhance your performance. So one of the areas that I think that often is neglected is how the brain functions at high speed to create decision making. If you study anything by Nick Winkelman, Nick was director, I believe, of education. He also ran the combine training program at Exos in Arizona, working with hundreds and hundreds of NFL and MLB draft picks. I think they had 100 Draft picks in the last NFL draft trained at Exos, so there's 300-ish people who get drafted. So 33% of those people are coming from Exos. He now runs the training program for rugby in Ireland with everyone from lower levels all the way up and through. And one of the things he talked about was the decision-making process and quick thinkers and quick movers. And the premise behind that is you might have someone who's a really quick mover, but a very slow thinker. That's that guy who shows up in a combine test and looks fantastic. But as soon as you put them on the field, they can't process information fast enough. And because they can't process that information fast enough, they're not able to get into and tap into all that athleticism they have. Then you have other people who are really fast thinkers but aren't great movers. They're not explosive movers. But they make up for their lack of athleticism with a processor that you can just get them going in the right direction faster. The comparison I use, and I know you know very little about football, but Ray Lewis at the end of his career became someone who was a much slower mover than he had ever been in his life. You know, he was very injured, very hurt, wasn't moving well, and was much bigger than he had been. And he was able to make plays and play at a super high level because at that point he could decipher patterns and schemes and recognition of what was going on faster than anybody else in the field. So he made up for a slower athletic function with a faster brain function. And the faster his brain went, the more he can make up for what he lacked. Talk about rookies who come into the NFL or come into sports and how much faster the game is. The game isn't necessarily faster on a physical level, right? Major League Baseball velocities are slower than minor league baseball fastball velocities. So there's a lot of guys who throw really hard, but it's the fine-tuning. It's the speed in which we make decisions. It's the speed in which you go and utilize that athleticism that you have that's so much faster as we move up and up and up these levels. So when we do different tennis ball games and we do all of those things, what we're trying to tap into is that processor. We're trying to make our athletes fast thinkers and fast movers. If all we do is make faster movers, our players might look great when they do testing. So you guys, if another facility or another coaching staff wanted to put their athletes against ours in terms of, hey, let's just test, our athletes are going to do very well, comparably. But when we look at performance per athlete, per coach, we crush everyone else in our area because all of our athletes make crazy progress because we spend time working on things that no one else is. Balancing on Bosu balls for stability is less beneficial than us spending time working on someone's hand-eye coordination, their ability to juggle, because that's something they can do every day, and it's going to make their brain function so much better. And that's like the next phase in where you want to be performance level-wise, from my perspective.
And like you said, with the juggling, reactive training, these are things that you just grab 3 tennis balls. Learning how to juggle is, and I want you to dive into because you know a shit ton about when we're talking about how the brains are left brain, right brain communication, things like that. But when you just grab 3 tennis balls, go to the store, grab 3, and you can do it all fucking day. When you're sitting at home watching TV, you start juggling. Progression-wise, do it with one eye closed, the other eye closed, do it against the wall, whatever. It's you could just create so many scenarios and have your brain see so many different things and then have to react and then just keep building and building and building, and you can just vastly improve on that. Before we go on to the juggling though, really quick, there's no testing in combine or anything like that really deals with reaction, right? And what is your opinion on does that need to be stated in there? Is it just fuck it, we'll just see athletes how they are now? Because how often does somebody get dope, they're great at the combine, right? They get picked, they're drafted, and they don't end up being that star player I thought they was because they're not a fast thinker and you couldn't test for it. Does that have to be put into the combine or any sports testing before any major league?
I think that absolutely some type of reactionary training should be, and I think soon it will be, in part of the testing process, because I think the combines are always done and they try to keep it as simplistic as they possibly can so that they have some sort of standardization. So at least everybody's working from the same framework of understanding. And you can start to create a historical analysis of who's fast, who's quick, who's powerful, right? And those numbers are great, but you can't quantify what is the ability to kind of watch and shed through garbage. A linebacker, they talk about, getting caught in the washer, or you're looking through blockers, different people, and you're trying to kind of get past all those people and get to the target clean. And it's hard when you have different blocking patterns. So a middle linebacker might be looking at their key, who is a guard on the strong side. So strong side just being that they're counterbalanced with a tight end on the side. So if I'm looking at my key and then I'm looking at the first back, right, he's my coverage. If I watch that guard pull in a direction, my first thought process is I should go that way. But then there's also some trickery and things that can happen in terms of doing counters and different stuff that works off of that. And you're trying to manage all of these different keys and all of these different schemes that are being thrown at you. And the faster thinker can kind of wash through it. And if there's no test to see how well somebody does, outside of watching game film, you can't see if someone is truly good at that. And then the problem at the lower levels is that what someone can do at a college level might be different than what somebody can do at a professional level. What someone was asked to do in a particular scheme might not be what they're asked to do at a higher level program. You see it with basketball players. A basketball player was a good player in one league, and then they come over here and they're a great player. You see the flip side, somebody who is a great player in a league and then they come into the NBA and they're not the same player that they were. And creating a system where you can look at someone's raw ability to analyze situations and create a reaction type, I think is not that far away. I think teams just have to recognize that it'll help them with the recruiting process. I think one of the bigger pushbacks that you get is possibly from agents who don't want that component to be in there, and then coaches who don't do what we do, who are like, hey, if I make somebody run a 4.2 40, I'm going to get them drafted high. Well, what happens if they're a 4.2 40 and you spend all this time just coaching technique, and then the reaction drills they shit the bed in, and that kid now drops, and the performance coach is like, well, I made him run so fast, and it's like, well, it's not track. Like being fast is important, but I think that we missed the boat. There was a player years ago, most of you guys will know who it is. His name is Anquan Bolden. He was a wide receiver who, when he came out, he ended up running, I think, like a 4.8 40-yard dash as a wide receiver, which is slow. And he fell in the draft. But coming into the draft, he's one of the best receivers in the college football game. And everyone's like, his speed is not going to translate. The reality of the situation was his ability to utilize his speed at 100% all the time was better than other people who might have run 4.6s, but they only could run 4.6 in a straight line. They couldn't make decisions quickly.
Second they had a cut.
Right. And Anquan Bolden came out, set the rookie record for catches, had 1,400 yards receiving as a rookie in the NFL, absolutely obliterated, had a borderline Hall of Fame career, and he's still playing in the NFL. And if he ran a 4.8 when he was young and healthy, and now he's in his mid-30s, and he's still playing, I know he's not running a 4.8 anymore. So here we have a guy who's running probably like a 5.1 40, who's been hurt multiple times, and he's still playing. And why? It's just because he can think and he can function at a faster level than everybody else. So I think if teams are smart, if they don't start doing it at the combine, I think some teams are going to start doing it in their private workouts.
Yeah, even just to...
Yeah, just trying to see. There's systems that you can do that you can get RFID chips on your wrist, and you set up the gates in any randomization that you want, and an athlete sees a light turn on, they have to go and make that response. And now you're seeing how they filter information, right? Now you're seeing it. We do games like red light, green light. We do different things where we drop different tennis balls. They have to react to one and not the other. We have one where we put the tennis ball up. We drop this one. They have to come and sprint, but then we throw this one backwards. So they have to decelerate, re-accelerate, change that position, and still go track something down. We're now working on the reaction component, and when you look at just the everyday drills that everybody loves, like L drill, pro agility, all that stuff, yeah, our athletes might not be the fastest person in that, but if I take your athlete, put them in our drill, my athlete's going to crush your athlete because they can pick up shit quick. Whereas somebody else who's just did the same drill over and over again might test well but play poor. And I'd rather have an athlete that tests good, not great, but performs like a freaking champion.
I think Jay does a good, and for those who don't know, Jay Falco's director of performance here, he's doing all the speed coaching now, he does a great job of taking these little games of reaction and integrating them into like how do we get them to run with the reactions. And I think like every time I watch him, man, he just does something new. I'm just like how the fuck did you even think of that, man? But go into juggling and how that plays a part in one, just creating better communication between left brain, right brain. Have you ever like looked up the research on like how it enhances like gray matter?
So I haven't looked at the gray matter function, and I haven't dived as deep in that regard. The big thing, and like if you follow Gray Cook and if you follow guys like Charlie Weingroff, or if you're just somebody who's just trying to get their kid better and you're watching these videos because you're like, hey, I want to find some stuff that I can do with my kid. The simple answer to everything is that our left side of our brain controls the right side of our body, our right side of our brain controls the left side of our body. And then when we cross midline of the body, so we cross this midpoint, there's like kind of a switchover, there's a changeover. And if you haven't learned how to communicate effectively with that changeover, right, and we don't have a seamless integration between these two sides, you can get a hesitation, right? We can have that kind of short circuit moment where the brain doesn't necessarily feel great in that regards. Running mechanics, it's when you see an athlete who's trying to march in place and they're using the same arm, same leg, right? Their communication is they're now thinking too robotically, right? There's not a good communication between sides. When we do juggling, right? Juggling, I'm now tracking a ball that's moving this way, while I'm also tracking a ball that's moving the complete opposite direction. So we have simultaneously crossing, you're dealing with how are you projecting the flight of the ball, the path of the ball, how quickly is it coming down, right? How soft is the ball? We change up what ball is in when somebody's doing it, right? They juggle 3 tennis balls, and then we say, give me one of the tennis balls, take a lacrosse ball. And now that changes the entire dynamic, and the body has to learn it novelly all over again. And that sensation and that thing changes the communication process. Well, how easy is it for us to ask a kid and say, hey, if you're just sitting at home, spend like 5-10 minutes juggling, right? But we're now going to have a better communication between one brain and the other brain. And we hope that we get some sort of carryover to that when we go into more advanced games. But just like anything else, just like when we do like conditioning, right? We have lower level conditioning and we have higher level, high intensity, like absolutely get crushed conditioning levels. And when you look at all of those things, nobody second guesses when we have a progressive model of, hey, we're building up tolerance to conditioning, right? But why are you not building up a tolerance to competition? Why are you not building up a tolerance to hand-eye coordination? Why are you not building up a tolerance to reaction time, right? All of those things can be trained from a lower level to a higher level, right? But when I get to my higher level stuff, like when you guys are out on the field and you're practicing and you're doing the actual events, right? Who says that doing your juggling didn't help if it was something that you can do all of the time at a low level and it has some benefit, right? As long as we have some type of scheme where we're integrating all of those things effectively, I think that you get a better athlete long term, right? And again, it goes back to not just creating a better machine, a better car, but creating a better driver, right? And I want a driver who knows how to use every little bit of their car effectively, knows their angles, knows, the drift, knows all of these different components that they're going to have to deal with. And we've put them in scenarios that showcase whether they're good at that scenario or bad, right? And if you don't put your athletes in a situation where they're forced to fail a little bit by doing some of these things where we work on reaction and projections and all that stuff, they're going to go out on the field and they're going to be very narrowly good. And I don't think that when you create that moment where that exceptional play happens, I think that they miss out on that exceptional play. Like Derek Jeter made a play, and I dog Derek Jeter all the time. He's one of the great players all time in baseball, but Derek Jeter's most famous plays weren't athletic plays. They weren't plays that required him to have tremendous athleticism and to make a tremendous athletic movement, right? Instead, it was the plays where he made incredible mental decisions, right? And one of those was ball gets hit out to the outfield and throws coming in, and no shortstop is sprinting all the way down to the first baseline. He does, picks up the ball, flips it to the catcher, and gets a guy out that if he hadn't seen the scenario and hadn't seen the moving pieces and been able to predict what was going to happen, he wouldn't have been in that spot at that moment. And no thing that he had ever done as a shortstop would have led him to make that decision. No classical training of being a shortstop would have said, go do this. It wasn't in the rules of what he was supposed to be doing necessarily. But he made a decision that is now going to live eternally as one of the great plays in baseball history. And that's because his brain was processing things at a faster level than everybody else. So how do we work on the processor all the time? Low level, high level. And that's tennis balls. That's the other games that we don't put online because they're even more of our secret sauce stuff, right? Like if we show tennis ball games, because to us at this point, right, if you don't know to use tennis balls, you don't know.
You don't know.
I mean, so that's me. That's my thoughts. You got stuff you want to add? Come on, brain fire.
Now I'm just thinking, man.
So while he's lost in thought, that's the end of episode 2, I would say.
Yeah, that was a solid.
And Joe, now you know.
Come through, play some games, dog.
Come through, homie. Supposed to be here on a Friday, hanging out, doing stuff with us.